Good morning. I just wanted to jump on today and talk about operation efficiency and how much we've been seeing that through the media. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Leslie Leondis, owner of Next Path Coaching, and also Leslie Leondis CPA. So, what I want to talk about is I have been infatuated with everything that has been going on in the government, not because it's not about being on one side of the fence or not. So, I want to put that out there. That's not what this is about. But when I have been infatuated with Doge, and the reason why is because I am an operational efficiency expert. Because I look at all things from an operations standpoint. Does it make sense? Is it worth the expense? And I look at team, I look at systems, I look at processes, I look at pricing, and I look at all of these things, a big picture. And it amazes me how people don't actually look at this on a regular basis. And it's because we get so busy in the business that we forget to look at that. So, one of the things that I always look at is what are our reoccurring expenses? Do they make sense? Do I have the team members in the right roles? Do I have, is things can be done more efficiently? And I'm going to use an example for this because, like I said, I do consider myself an operation expert, but we were doing a lot of things manually in our marketing system. So I actually hired a marketing consultant to help us with some Facebook ads and different things. And then she started talking about the system that they used. And I don't want to get into a big tech talk here, but I want you to catch what I'm trying to say. So she shared with me some of the things that in the system that she normally uses, the things that they could do. And I looked at our CRM and I was like, "Ooh, I can't do any of that." We are having to manually do that right now, where she's all about the automation. And it's not about cutting team members and cutting staff, it's about making them efficient. And I have a perfect story for this. And this happened, I think it was around 2012 when I was working for a bank. And this was before I really got deep into learning operations and how things function. And it was when I was working on getting my CPA license. So I was studying a lot for the CPA exam. And so I was working for this bank. And I went to work there as a senior financial reporting something. And so I was excited for this position, but the thing was, it was a brand new position and they had no idea what to do with me. So they made this brand new position, but they had no clue what this position was going to do. And I have worked in with a lot of government type entities too that are like nonprofits that are funded by a lot of government, and we've done like deep dives into their operations to make sure that they're running efficiently by looking at what their expenses are, if they're making, is there an ROI on that, what's the executive director working on, all kinds of things. That's what Doge is supposedly doing. But the truth is we should be doing it in every business, never, whether it's a nonprofit, for profit, government, whatever, because things change over time. And I know a lot of the tax preparers have been like freaking out over a lot of the IRS issues and things like that. But I've been in this business for almost 20 years now, and the IRS has never been efficient. And it's just getting worse and worse. And that's what it is. And that's what we need to look at. Not only we need to look at that internally too. And that's what we do a lot of times. We do an operational efficiency audit, like looking at your systems. Are they the most effective system? Do you have people in the right roles? Because when I was working for that bank, I would literally sit there in a cubicle all day and just look around. And this is where my genius of being a wanderer and inventor comes in. And I would just look around and I'm like, this is the most of inefficient place I've ever seen. Because it was in 2012 and their tech was so outdated already. And so everything was manual, from actually like the fixed assets, where we had to print the invoice. There was no way to attach it in the system to put it in the fixed asset module. They had different modules for everything. And it was so inefficient in how you had to do things. And that's the world we're living in right now. And like I said, I don't care what side of the fence you're on here, but the point I'm trying to get to is we are in a time of very high inflation. So you have to look at, am I operating as efficient as possible? And then when I saw that there was a place in my organization where we could make things more efficient, it wasn't about removing team members. It was about moving the team member into the right place. Is that what the team member should be doing manually, or could we have a system actually do that? Because that's the thing that I see people afraid of, is actually automating. And there was a thing I saw, I can't remember if it was the AICPA or Texas Society or who it was, but showed how accountants are afraid of AI and afraid of a lot of things a lot of the tech that's going on. So the accounting industry, to me, is behind in the whole tech movement, but they're not the only ones. And so we've got to really look at our operations, because people are leaving companies because they're not efficient and they don't have them in the right roles. So that's one of the things that we do, is we look at your operations. Are they efficient? Where are the gaps? We look at the team. Are they in the right roles? Because a lot of times team members are actually in the wrong role. We've had several conversations with our coaching clients, and they're like, this person just can't do this. They're not working out. I'm like, but are they in the right role? And so we really started digging into if they're in the right role. And a lot of times they're not, because we may have hired them for one place, but when looking at what their geniuses are and looking at where they don't belong in that role. And it's not about creating another role for them. It's like looking at the organization. Does it make sense to move them over here? Because I have moved people in my organization all over the place. Sometimes they get whiplash because they get moved, but they're also able to support each other if one of them's out. And that's the another key thing here is having places where people can offset each other. So back to my thing, if one of the people were out at month end, it literally stalled month end because nobody else knew how to do it. Even though there was a staff of about 5 of us that were in the financial reporting role, if that one person was out, the whole thing stopped, because we could only do a little portion of it. And this is what I see in accounting firms a lot, is they can do one portion and they can't do the rest of the portion. They have no idea how the rest even works. And that's where you have a fully aligned team, is when they get the big picture. And this is what we're seeing a lot of right now, is people don't get the big picture. They're seeing this little piece, but not the whole thing from an operational standpoint. And when you're working all the time and you're the one doing all the doing, it's really hard to see this. It is so hard to see this. So that's one thing I want you to think about, is where do I have operational efficiencies? And we're in the midst of tax season right now. I get it. But this is where you're going to find it the most, because everybody is scrambling. And I guarantee you're going back up, you're playing ping pong with clients. I need this form, I need this form, back and forth. But it comes down to efficiency and what is the best movement. And I see so many tax firms put in tech like TaxDome and Keeper in the bookkeeping world, and Canopy and ClickUp, Asana, and so many different Lisio and so many different things, but they don't think about the efficiency part of it, of what it is going to look like. And yes, some of those platforms send emails to clients automatically, hey, we need this, we need this. But 9 times out of 10, they're going to spam, but we're actually never following up on it. And sometimes those automations are saying, hey, I need this SS form. And they're like, I don't even know what that is. So they ignore you. That's not efficient. And then you pick the tax return up or the bookkeeping work up again, and you're like, where was I? It's not efficient. So this is all about efficiency. So imagine what your tax and your bookkeeping business could look like if you actually dug down in the operations. And I've talked to several people and they're like, I just need to hire more people. That's what the government is doing. They're just hiring more people, but not actually solving the problem. And so that's where you have to look deep in this. And a lot of times it's not surface level that you actually see it. Because many times when we're in our coaching conversations, a client will say something. I'm like, can you back that up again? Can you say that again? And I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you doing it that way? And it's not about doing it my way. It's about doing it the most efficient way. And so and I'm trying to think of an example right now, but one of our clients, the way they got their tax information was so piecemeal. Like clients were uploading stuff throughout and then they would start the return. So then they would start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. And she was like, I can get that way, it's already started. But then you're having to see what you already did. Why can't you wait till you get all the information? Because then you're going to decide whether that client's going to go on extension or not. But you've already wasted time. And for those of you that are billing after the fact, you're paying a team member to actually do that work up front while you're not getting paid. So you're out the money up front. And then if you think about bookkeeping cleanups and all the stuff that the bookkeepers go through, you need to be crystal clear in these cleanups for operation efficiency that you have the information to start with. And I know there's going to be back and forth, but a lot of you bill after the fact. You're so deep in it that the client can actually walk away. And where in QuickBooks Online and some of these online platforms, they already have your work. So why are you getting paid after the fact, which is not efficient, because you're going to have to pay a team member or yourself to do the work. And I've seen so many bookkeepers and accountants get into this where they've started the work and then the client decides, hey, I found somebody else that can do it faster. Or they've started the work and they're missing all the credit card statements, or they're missing half the bank statements. And so that's why it's so important to deep dive into these cleanups and decide, hey, number one, is it worth for me to do it? Do I have the capacity to do it? Because then what happens is we get stuck in the cleanup world and everything else is compounding behind us. And that's what creates these huge bottlenecks. And that's where people that are so inefficient are in these bottlenecks. And a lot of times it's because they're not seeing straight. They're in the weeds of doing it. And that's why it's important to have somebody come in and look at your operations, look at your team, look at your leadership, and see what the problem is. Because what you feel the problem is, 9 times out of 10, that's not the real problem. The real problem is something else. And I talked about this, I believe, yesterday on another Facebook Live. Because the real problem is usually something you don't even know when you dig deep, which is why we also have teams come to our coaching calls, because it gives us a different perspective. It gives us a different view from what the owner thinks. So as you go through today, and I know many of you are working on the weekend because we are coming up to a March 15th deadline next week, think about what is not efficient and jot it down somewhere. I don't care if it's a piece of paper, if it's a Google Doc, if it's a Word doc, jot it down. Because once you're out of this time, you won't see it again. You will not think about it again. Because if you've watched this video, it's in your mind right now. But in a week or even tomorrow, it's not going to be in your mind. So if you start a piece of paper or Google Doc or whatever, Google Doc, have open, this is not efficient. We had a doc last year that was like, what went wrong, what went right during tax season in our accounting firm. And we have that in our task management system. And that guides my team. These are the things that went wrong last year. And they are adjusting to them. And we've made adjustments for them. We've already started a one for this year and added that to the bottom of it so we can make sure, hey, did we repeat the same thing that we did the last year? This year is the same thing repeated. And that's what it's about, no matter what type of business that you're in. Because, like I said, I've looked at nonprofits, I've looked at government agencies, I've looked at businesses, and are they the most efficient as possible? Because that's where we're losing money. And the other thing is to really recognize is cash flow is a problem no matter what business you're in, any of the entities that I just talked about. And when you're inefficient, it makes that cash flow even tighter than it is now because you're having to pay to do something inefficient. And then if you're paying for systems you're not using, that is also inefficient. If you're implementing system after system because they're not fully implemented, and so you're going after the next shiny object, that is not efficient. So these are some of the things I wanted to talk about this Friday that was weighing on my mind after I was on Facebook and I was reading about some of this Doge stuff. And I know you don't ever know what's really happening, but from an operation standpoint, it made me start thinking about my clients. It made me start thinking about just the world in general and how I go into, let's just say, a Starbucks, and I always look, are they being efficient? And I'll use this one. I'm located in a small town in Texas, and they recently remodeled the Starbucks that's probably about 15 miles from me. And then they put up, and I've gone in there and I've worked sometimes there when my internet's acting up here, and I've worked in there sometimes. And I noticed they had an efficiency where people were coming up and asking if their drink was ready because they do have their drive-through is always long. Their online orders are because it's the closest Starbucks within probably 50 miles. So they get people from all over at the Starbucks. So they were constantly having to stop, answer that question, which was making it inefficient. And I noticed when they remodeled, and I've never seen this in another Starbucks. So, and it could be just, I've just haven't seen it, but they have now a board that shows whether it was and customers can see it. They can see their name. They can see where their order is in the pipeline, which is very similar to what I think TaxDome is trying to create. But what they did there is they put that in to stop people from having to ask the question. And I was like, huh, that's Operation Genius right there. Just looking at that board because I was able to see where my order was. And then they have it. And if you have a food order, they have it marked different. Your name's on there twice. You have a food order and then you have a drink order. And I was like, so that way they know, okay, your food order is in this place and your drink is in this place. So when I think about operational efficiency, I think about this everywhere I go. It's like my brain doesn't turn off to it. All that said, you can work on this during your busiest time. I don't care what you tell me. I've done it. I did it when I first started doing this, and it was to get my business where I was not running like a crazy person and having to work crazy hours. Because if I was having to do that, I wouldn't be doing these type videos or whatever, because I just literally got out of the shower and I'm like, hey, I feel like I need to talk about this today. So I want you to think about that. What are you doing that's not efficient? And if you have questions about hey, is this efficient or not efficient? Feel free to DM me. I will answer your question. But if you want us to do a deep dive into your operations, comment below deep dive and we'll reach out to see how we can support you. Or we might be able to just tell you, hey, just switch this one little thing. But I'm telling you, it is so important to do. And it's really important to do it while you're in the midst of it. So I hope this training was helpful. And if you have questions, drop them in the comments. I will be glad to answer any questions. If you have questions that you don't want to put in comments, feel free to DM me. I'm okay with that. Not a problem. I'm not going to try to sell you. I will just answer your question. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you soon.